give me a chance at life. Recognize I didn't say a chance at a life, I said a chance at life, to live another day. The war was escalating, it was becoming more dangerous. My mom makes this decision. But in making this decision to marry this guy to take us to the U.S., my mom simultaneously makes the decision to leave her whole family behind. She can't bring her mom and dad, 5 brothers and sisters. That pains her a great deal because in Vietnamese culture, family means everything. To offset some of her pain, try to give us both hope as we're flying from Vietnam to the U.S., my mom tries to teach me some things that she had learned about the United States as she was growing up. She tried to teach me some great, powerful, positive concepts embedded in the beginning words of our Declaration of Independence. Words that sound like these. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with their creators with certain inalienable rights, that among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. She tried to teach me great concepts in those words. She tried to teach me the place we're going, called the United States of America, was one of very few places across the globe where you could come with nothing except for the shirt on your back, but end up with something if you worked hard enough. She left off the part about it's good to know people too. And what the research suggests is relationships are more important than hard work. Relationships are what we call a primary factor. Hard work tends to be a secondary factor, meaning you have to give opportunity first before you show that you work hard. So she tries to teach me these things to give us hope. We finally land into LAX, Los Angeles International Airport, walk off the plane, go into the processing area. As we leave the processing area, we enter a corridor. In that corridor, just outside of it, we're greeted by people who begin throwing things at me and my mom. And these were not good things. They would spit on us as we walked by. They yelled horrible words at us as we passed by. I didn't understand English at the time, but I knew these were not good words by the way people were yelling them. I remember my mom putting her arms around me, all 4'11", 95 pounds of this young Vietnamese woman trying to protect her only son from the things that people were throwing at us. As we walked along the corridor, sometimes the pelts would become harder and harder. My mom would instinctively squeeze tighter and tighter. Sometimes she would squeeze so tightly it would hurt. On those occasions, I'd look up, I'd want to say something to my mom, but I never did. Because every time I looked up, all I saw was tears streaming down her face. And even as a little 5-year-old, I knew I should be silent at the time. We weren't treated very well when we first arrived in the United States. We were these outsiders. We represented a war in some people's minds they did not want to be in. We endured a lot of social pain. It wasn't just us. And people look at us. It was also soldiers who were coming back from the war. Recognize we didn't even treat our soldiers very well. Imagine if we didn't even treat our soldiers well. Imagine what it might be like to actually be Vietnamese at that time. I grew up in some tough neighborhoods around LA called Compton, Long Beach, and Bellflower. I'd often get bloodied and beaten in fights I got into at school. It was a regular occurrence, not just for me, but for many kids. But as an adult, I don't look upon those years and think about my pain. I'm a parent now. I look upon those years through the lens of a parent and think about, what did my mom have to endure every single day when she sent me to school and had to wait many hours to find out how much blood might be on me when I got home from school. Imagine being a parent like that in those conditions. To make a long story short, the guy that my mom married, my stepfather, I was never really close to him. We didn't have much in common. But also, it's hard to get close to someone who beats you when you're a minute late for dinner. He would beat you again because you couldn't finish your dinner because you weren't hungry from the first beating. My stepfather was physically and psychologically abusive to me and my mom. Couldn't get close to him, obviously. But my stepfather, he got really close to my little sister. In 1984, my stepfather was convicted of raping my little sister. And because of that, the way she was treated as a biracial child, half white, half Vietnamese, at school, my sister ran away from home with an acquaintance of hers in the summer of 1985. 1 month after my sister runs away, my mom gets a phone call from a detective in the King County Sheriff's Department, Seattle, Washington. And in so many words, the detective says to my mom, "Mrs. Robbins, we found the other girl that your daughter ran away with, but that other girl had been sexually assaulted and bludgeoned to death. And as soon as he says that, my mom frantically asks, what about my daughter? What about Diane? What do you know about her? And all the detective could say to all my mom's questions was, we don't know. There's no trace of your daughter. We don't know. There's no evidence of your daughter. We don't know. There are no leads to follow. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. All I could say over and over was, we don't know. That was 1985. It's 2019 now, and we still don't know. How many of you have ever heard of a guy by the name of Gary Ridgway? You would know him as the Green River Killer.
Yeah.
Murdered more than dozens of young women in the Green River area, Seattle, Washington, in the 80s and 90s. My sisters believe he wanted as many victims. If you Google my sister's name, Diane Robbins, with the keywords missing children, it will take you to a link for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You can read about her and her case file there. As you might imagine, after that phone call, life isn't so good for my mom and for me. And it's especially bad for my mom, because you're not supposed to outlive your children, are you? My mom goes into this deep depression. Not many happy days in her life after that call. But there came a time when she was happy, at least temporarily. It came in June of 1991. That's when I get married to my wife Donna out in Michigan. My mom flies out for this week-long wedding celebration, and for a week, it's the happiest I've seen my mom since that phone call. But the wedding celebration ends. My mom flies back home to Washington State, where she's living at the time, goes back into depression. Just a few months later, in the fall of 1991, I began graduate school at Michigan State University. My mom and I are separated by a couple thousand miles, so we talk on the phone every week, share with each other the week's events. On this particular phone call in late October 91, we're talking and we're sharing. As we're about to close, before we hang up, my mom says to me, Long, my Vietnamese name, Long, you have Donna to take care of you now, she says, and we hang up. A week later, I get a phone call from Washington State. I expected to be my mom, but it turns out to be a detective from the Benton County Sheriff's Department, where my mom was living at the time. And the detective, in so many words, says to me, Mr. Robbins, we have some unfortunate news. We just found your mom, and she was hanging in her shower. A week after my mom says to me, you have Donna to take care of you now, my mom takes her own life. Up until the point of my mom's suicide, I hated being Asian. I hated what I looked like. I hated the people I came from. Why? It's because I heard so many negative messages about people who looked like me, Vietnamese people, that my own brain, without my permission, built a negative mental model of people like me. I hated being me. In the world of race studies, we call that internalized racial oppression. When you start to hate the people you come from because you believe all the bad stuff told about the people you come from. The gender equivalent of that is when we use media messages to tell young girls and women what they're supposed to look like. And when some can't achieve that look, they start to hate who they are. Do not underestimate the power of words and messages to tear people down, to make them feel like an outsider, to cause them social pain. But also, do not underestimate the power of words and messages to lift people up, to make them feel like insiders, to take away their pain. If there was anything that was good that came out of my mom's suicide, it might be this, the timing of it. It happened the first semester of graduate school for me. It's that one single incident alone that led me to study what I studied in graduate school. Some of the things that we talked about today. It's that one single incident alone that leads me to do the work that I do today. I do this work that people call diversity and inclusion to honor my mom and my little sister, to try to create a better world for my 4 kids and their friends. This work that people call diversity and inclusion, for me, it's fundamentally, at its essence, it's about caring for other people. That's what inclusion work is all about, caring for other people. And the true measure of whether you're a caring person is not how well you care for your friends and your homies. The true measure of a caring person is how well you care for strangers and outsiders. That's the true measure. The cool part about that is this: the more you care for strangers and outsiders, the more friends and homies you get. You don't know which time you came up to someone in the workplace, their heads hung down low. You don't know which time you came up to them and you go, how are you doing today? Want to have lunch? You know which time you came up to a new employee who's all stressed, can't figure out what to do. They just got yelled at by somebody. You're sitting alone in the corner in the lunchroom. You go to them, hey, Can I have lunch with you? You don't know which time you did that, you reached out to the outsider, let them know that they have a tribe. You don't know which time you did that, that you may have just prevented a phone call to say, we just found your mom, your brother, or your sister, or your dad. See, this is real work for me. It's not about numbers, it's about, do we care for people? Do we care for people? So I ask you to practice something. Become more mindful, observant of your world. Try to be cognizant and mindful of maybe some outsiders that you've never seen before. And then find a way to let them know that they have a tribe. Go to them and open the door and say, be part of my tribe. That's all I want you to do. Thank you for your time. Hey, you're free to go. Leave, go.